2021 pada tahun ini. Dan terima kasih juga pada penceramah kita, Prof. Maheshwari, kerana sudi menerima undangan daripada kami di Inspem. Sebelum beliau membentangkan sedikit latar belakang mengenai pembentang kita, Profesor Dr. Maheshwari, anak perempuan Dapur Dewan, merupakan profesor di Pusat Pengajian Ilmu Pendidikan di USM. Beliau mendapat ijazah pertama dari UPM, Diploma Pendidikan dari Universiti Malaya, Master dalam bidang Master dalam Education dari USM dan PhD dari USM. Bidang kepakaran beliau adalah pendidikan kimia dan Green Chemistry in Education, dan beliau juga menjalankan pendidikan dalam Mathematics Education. Dan tanpa melengah masa, saya jemput Profesor untuk membentangkan pembentangan beliau. Dengan sobat yang persilakan.
Okey, terima kasih Dr. Rohaizat. Dengan izin saya akan berucap dalam bahasa Inggeris ya, Dr. Rohaizat.
Ya, boleh.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Ya.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And very good afternoon and salam sejahtera to all the viewers that are participating in this talk during this webinar. And my sincere thanks to Dr. Muhammad Rohaizat to identifying me and inviting me, and also my thanks to Institute Penyelidikan Matematik for inviting me to share some knowledge on this research, transdisciplinary research that we are conducting at USM. Transdisciplinary is very much in line with the mixed method approach or pragmatic philosophy. Transdisciplinary adapt a pragmatic approach, and one of the way to execute pragmatic philosophy in research is using mixed method design. Okay, so today I'm going to give you an overall glance on what is pragmatism and how mixed method research actually coheres the pragmatic philosophy. So this is just a overall glance, because in 1 hour it is quite impossible for me to explain the entire pragmatism and how mixed method design complements pragmatism philosophy. So it's just a glance. Okay, if you want to know detail, later I'll be conducting workshops, so you can feel free to attend my workshops at USM. Okay, and I'm not very used to Google Meet because we use WebEx and Zoom more commonly. So if I have any problem, perhaps Dr. Rohaizat can help me. Good. Okay, boleh ya, Dr.
Boleh.
Rohaizat. Okay, right. So let me start with some introduction on USM. Hold on. So I think I shared the slide wrongly. I shared the window. I think betul ke Dr. Haizat? Betul kena share window?
Ya, betul. Sekarang ni dah cuma Prof tekan slideshow je.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. Okay.
Boleh ya? Oh, okay. Right. So a little bit introduction on USM. So as you all know, maybe many of you already know, USM is located at the northern region of Malaysia. So feel free to visit Penang, at the same time drop by at USM and see our green features at USM. So USM is actively engaged in greening the research, greening the education, and greening the entire perspective on higher education conducted at USM. So sustainability is our main agenda. I'm very sure UPM also is on the greener path, because my first degree is from USM, UPM. So it is my alumni. I'm an alumni of UPM. So that was back in 1995, 96. So that time the entire UPM is very green. Okay, I'm not sure about now, but at USM we are trying to follow. Um, trying to adapt greener approach to teaching and learning, sustainability into research, and transdisciplinary research, and an overarching perspective to research. We are introducing transdisciplinary. So what is transdisciplinary and how we can actually embed transdisciplinary into the teaching and learning, into our research, and so on, is through adapting pragmatist philosophy. Okay, adapting pragmatist philosophy. So what is pragmatism? Okay, so I'm very sure all of you are involved in research, all of you are engaged in doing research, um, and they are basically three dimension to research. Okay, three paradigm to research. Some people they use positivist paradigm, some people will be using constructivist paradigm, another paradigm is the pragmatist paradigm. So what is positivism, what is constructivism, and what is pragmatism? I will go detail into during this talk. And also I will talk about why pragmatism is so important to solve complex problem that we are experiencing at this point of time. The global problem, our local problem, everything are complex. So it is not a single disciplinary or discipline specific problem where you can adapt constructivism or positivist philosophy. The problems are very diverse, the problems are multifaceted. So you can't actually we have to go beyond constructivist, or we have to go beyond what you call that positivist paradigm to solve this problem. So before going into this detail about all this paradigm, I would like to introduce three important terms in doing research. I'm very sure all of you are well versed in doing research, but I'm not sure whether to what extent you are knowledgeable, or to what extent you really know what you're doing. Because this is the problem that I encounter with my own graduate students, my PhD students. So I have graduated almost 30 plus PhD students. When they started their research, they just simply do based on what their colleague, their what you call that, their friends have done. They just use past studies, previous studies, and simply do the research. They just follow, adapt the research method given in a textbook, or research method that they have got information from a previous researcher or something like that. But the reality of what is research and how to do research, many of my graduate students are ignorant. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you all are active researcher, but I'm not very sure to what extent you know what actually you're doing. You really know whether you are adapting a proper methodology in method in your research. Okay, right. So in order to know whether you're doing the right thing or not, firstly we should start with these three terms. These are the three important terms in doing research. It doesn't matter you're doing a pure science research, or you're doing social science research, or you're doing any educational research. These are the three things that it is important that you need to know. So what are these three terms? The first term is paradigm. So what is the meaning of paradigm? So just now I used three different paradigm. Constructivist paradigm, what you call that, positivist paradigm, and pragmatist paradigm. So these are three different paradigms. Paradigms also known as philosophy. Some researchers call paradigm as philosophy. Some researchers call paradigm as worldview. Worldview, paradigm, and philosophy. These three phases are used interchangeably. So you can use any of these three phases, but they are actually referring to the same thing. So what is the thing that they are referring to? It is a systems of belief. It is a belief, it is assumption, it is a practice. Okay, so the belief that actually guided the researcher to propose the research question and the method. the idea, the assumption that the researcher have in their mind, that have actually guided them to decide on the research question and also decide on the research method. So what is their belief? Later I will go very deep on this. So what is methodology? you know as a researcher, we always use this word, methodology and methods, interchangeably. We assume they are the same, but in reality they are different. Methodology is different and methods is different. Methods refers to the specific strategy used in the study. For example, you have a method for collecting data. So what is the method for collecting data? Some of you use interview, some of you use questionnaire, some of you use what you call that, observation tool. Some of you do document analysis. Document analysis, that means you have a PDF document, you have photos, you have figures, you do some kind of analysis. So all these are tools used in the research. Some of you will be using PLSM, partial least square structural equation modeling, to as a tool to analyze the data. It's an analyzing technique. Some of you will be using SPSS. Um, or are doing a thematic analysis. So all these are referred to as specific tools used in the research. Okay, but what is methodology? Methodology is the overall wider view that you have actually wider or broader approach to answer the research question. So it includes the research procedure, it includes the design that you will be using, it includes the sampling, it includes the data collection, it includes everything. So that means the entire chapter 3, let's say if you're using if you're doing a thesis, a PhD thesis, the entire chapter 3 is the methodology. Okay, so if you're writing a journal article, rather than saying it as a method, it is more appropriate to say methodology. After you write your introduction, after the introduction you will have a background, and then followed by a methodology. Method means it is not very correct. The better term to use is methodology, because in that section you will be talking about the whole approach that you are applying to do the research, or the whole approach that you are applying to seek answer for the research question or to the scientific inquiry. So I hope you understand there are three terms here: paradigm, methodology, and methods. And these three terms are connected to each other. Paradigm will inform the methodology, and then the methodology will inform the method. So like for example, the four levels for developing a research study proposed by Crotty in 1998. In fact, this is the level, the four levels has been adapted by Crashwell in his book. So if you look into Crashwell's book, you will see this flow is there. So that means the paradigm, the worldview, or the philosophy will let you know whether what kind of theory that you're using. Is it a theory driven study? It is a theory emerging study, or it is a combination of theory driven and theory emerging. Okay, so the paradigm will inform theoretical lenses. So is your study theory driven? That means, are you using a theory which some people have proposed and you are testing the theory in your study, or are you coming up with a new set of theory from the finding of your study, or are you using both? Are you coming up with a theory, at the same time are you testing the theory? So the paradigm that you are using will inform the theoretical lens, and then the theoretical lens will imply the kind of methodological approach that is required for the study. So if your study is a theory testing, the methodological approach will be different if your study is theory emerging. you know and also the methodological will be different if the study involves both what do you call that, theory testing as well as theory emerging. So the methodological approach will be different. And then the methods of data collection will also follow with the kind of methodological that approach that you are using. So if let's say you are combining both theory testing and theory emerging, so your methodological approach will be more of using both of quant and qual uh, 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 in your study. So your quant might be a kind of survey, your qual might be a kind of document analysis, or qual kind of interview. Then collectively you merge them. Then merging it will decide on the kind of methods of data collection. So you might be using questionnaire, you might using a kind of interview survey, you might using a picture observation, so this is a four levels of developing a research study. So in order to do the research correctly, you need to understand all these four levels well. So sometimes you will be contemplating why some people can go for high impact journal, why my study is not going for high impact journal. So one possible reason, probably because of the rigorousness of the method section of your study. So I am editor as well as associate editor as well as a reviewer for many Q1 JCR journal, SSCI journal, and as well as science citation journals. One of the primary flaws that we identify, what actually impedes students from publishing in impact factor journals, uh, is because of the rigor. The method section appears to be less rigor. Okay, so make sure your method follows the four levels of the proposed by Crotty. You will know, you will not make a mistake, or your writing would not be there won't be any flaw in your writing. Okay, right. So it is quite impossible to really understand the entire thing within this 30 minutes talk. You get the idea and go back and then try to read up more on how people have used these levels in their study. Okay, so I talk about paradigm just now, so I'm going to go deeper on that. So there are three different types of paradigms, philosophy, or worldview. Okay, so there's something called positivist paradigm, there's something called constructivist paradigm, and there's something called pragmatist paradigm. Okay, so what are the differences between positivist, constructivist, pragmatism? Okay, right. After this explanation, after this slide, I hope the viewer would be able to gauge what what approach falls under the positivist paradigm, what research approach falls under the constructivist paradigm, and what research approach falls under the pragmatism paradigm. So if you look at the positivist paradigm, it is very much of determination oriented. Okay, determination, you are determining something. Okay, it is very much of reductionism, it is reduced to a smaller scope. It is very much of empirical observation and measurement. You are measuring what is observed, what is not. You notice something, you are observing something. Okay, like for example, you are noticing poor environmental values of the student, or you are noticing um, Malaysians generally lack, like currently we are doing research on microplastic pollution, or microplastic, the presence of microplastic in mineral water bottles, and in the food packaging. We are doing some research on that. So generally we got the finding that we realized that Malaysian generally lack the knowledge about microplastic, the presence of microplastic in food, in the drinking water, and so on. So this is what we observe. But then we want to prove that Malaysians, in actual fact, they are lack knowledge. We need to do some kind of survey. So that is, we are seeing, and then we also measuring, and there is an empirical evidence based on a survey finding. And it is basically a theory verification. You are verifying the theory. Okay, right. So from here, what you can say that, hold on, okay. So from here, you can see that theory verification, that means you already have a theory somewhere and you are testing the theory in your context. So some people would have done a research, they have proposed a theory, now you want to test the theory in your context. So for example, uh, um, uh, microplastic pollution is associated with behavior, for example. Okay, past study, the theory says that microplastic pollution is associated with the behavior. So that is past study. Well, a theory, a TPB, with the theory of planned behavior, have said that. But I'm not sure whether that kind of relationship exists in the Malaysian context. So what I will do, I take I administer some kind of questionnaire or survey. I collect data on knowledge, and also I collect data on behavior. Then I see whether there is any kind of correlation between knowledge and behavior. So then I, based on the finding, I confirm, oh, yeah, knowledge and behavior, there is some kind of correlation. That means this theory people have proposed somewhere, people have actually confirmed somewhere, but I'm just testing the theory whether it works in Malaysian context. Very simple example. So it is very much of reductionism. It is reduced to one small reduced to one context, very much context specific. And it is also very determining. That means I'm determining that the knowledge and behavior, there is some kind of correlation. So it is what it is called positivist paradigm. So hope after this explanation you could view that positivist paradigm very much got to do with the quantitative research perspective. Okay, right. Constructivist paradigm is more of understanding a phenomena. It is not theory testing, it is more of a theory generation. So I see that I can, from my experience of doing research in microplastic, I can see mm, pollution is quite bad. Microplastic pollution is quite bad. So I want to know what could be the reason for this kind of pollution to happen in Malaysia, among Malaysian society. So what I will be doing is I try to interview some group of people. Maybe I interview experts, then I interview lay people, and then I go and do observation in different areas. Maybe I will do in urban area, I will do some observation in rural area, I interview the people living in the rural area, then I interview people living in the urban area, then I interview different category of people. There may be highly educated people, or maybe I also will interview mediocres. So collectively, when I get all the data from different level of participants, I come up with my own understanding. I make a own understanding about why microplastic pollution is quite bad in Malaysia. So from there, I come up with my own theory. Okay, so I construct a theory. Okay, so but this theory whether works or not, I'm not sure, because it is constructed based on a very constrained kind of samples, very constrained situation, a very constrained context. But whether the theory works in a wider perspective, I'm not sure. So I need to go to another different level study. But from the Malaysian perspective, I could come up with some kind of understanding. Based on my research, I could generate a theory. Okay, so you can see that here the view is multiple. Okay, it is not reduced to a single perspective, but the view is multiple, from various background, various situation, and various people with a different educational level, socioeconomic status. So you diversify. So this is called theory generation, and this falls under the constructivist paradigm. So if you see that, if you can understand what I'm saying very well, this constructivist paradigm will adapt qualitative approach. Okay, so your positivist paradigm, it is more of quantitative approach. Constructivist paradigm falls under the qualitative approach, and we go into the pragmatist paradigm. Pragmatism is actually adapting the positive points of positivism and the positive points of constructivism. It considers both the positive pros of positivism and constructivism, and uh, uh, in the pragmatism philosophy, it is more of what works. It's more of what is the real world problem. So I adapt, I do the research based on what works best for my real world, the problem that I'm investigating. So at times I need to use constructivism. Similarly, at the same way, at times I need to use uh, positivist what you call that, philosophy. So both positivism and constructivism works together at the right time. So that means to solve the problem on microplastic, what you call that, for me to investigate the problem on microplastic, first I need to get data from a wider population. So I need to get not only people in Penang, but I also want to explore people in Kuala Lumpur, people in Sabah and Sarawak, people in Kelantan. Then not only that, I also want to go deeper. Why in Penang the pollution is severe compared to other states? So uh, I'm going wider, at the same time I'm going deeper. So it is very much of problem centered, it is very much of pluralistic, it is also real world oriented. It's not actually looking into one philosophy, but it is merging both the philosophy in order to uh, uh, in order my research to work. So that's why we call it as a pragmatism philosophy. So, what is pragmatism in a lay term? It adapts the pros of positivism and adapts the pros of constructivism, because qualitative research, it has its lackings, quantitative research, it has its lackings. So to avoid, to overcome the lackings of positivism and constructivism, we adapt pragmatism, so that both the pros of positivism and constructivism are adapted together in a way that it is helpful to solve a real world problem. Okay, right. So I talked about three different paradigms, right? Constructivism, positivism, and pragmatism. So what are the dimension of this paradigm? Or sometimes it is called elements of this paradigm. So actually, these three paradigms are explained by five elements. Okay, five elements. The five elements are known as ontology, epistemology, axiology, methodology, rhetoric. Okay, so in order for you to decide whether you are adapting constructivism, um, positivism, or pragmatism, you need to know the five elements that explains the philosophy or the worldview or the uh, what you call that, a paradigm. Okay, so these three words, paradigm, philosophy, worldview, it is used interchangeably, but actually they are the same, they are referring to the same thing, right? So these five elements explains the worldview: ontology, epistemology, axiology, methodology, and rhetoric. Okay, these are the five elements. So in order for you to decide, am I going to use a constructivist paradigm in my research, or am I going to use a pragmatism, or am I going to use positivism, what philosophy I'm going to use? Okay, you can answer that question after knowing these five elements. So let's see what are these five elements. Okay, Axiology, the meaning of axiology is what is the role of values. Unbiased. Okay, so positivism is unbiased, constructivism is biased, pragmatism multiple stance. So that means you as a researcher, okay, you have no say in the finding, okay, in the research process. So you are totally separated from the research process. So your values you cannot impose in conducting the research if you are adapting a positivism. If you're adapting a constructivism, your values you can impose in the process of doing research. So for example, in drafting the research question, you can actually twist and turn the research question in order to get answer as you want, as you intend. Okay, but if it is a positivism, you can't do that. You have a set of what you call that questionnaire. You're going to what you call that administer the questionnaire. You're going to take the questionnaire finding and then you're going to analyze. Your value you can't put inside there. But in the constructivism, you can actually try to get the finding, twist and turn the finding so that it is in line with your view or with your perspective. So you have your values imposed. Pragmatism, it has both. At times you can have your value imposed. It is necessary to have the value imposed, but at the some time there are times that you have to be independent. You can't put your values there. So you at times you are free, unbiased, and at times you are biased. So it has two dimensions as well. Okay, now that is method, what you call it, axiology. What is the role of the researcher's value? The second element is methodology. Methodology is the process of research. So for positivism, it is very deductive, theory driven. That's why I said theory driven. It is very, very deductive. You are narrowed to a finding. You want to get the values. Let's say you want to measure environmental attitude. You just focus on environmental attitude. Anything beyond the scope of environmental attitude, you would not like to see. But in the constructivist perspective, it is very inductive. There is a problem of microplastic pollution. So you don't know whether it is a behavior, or you don't know it is because of their attitude, or because of the lacking of knowledge. So you try to get what could be the reason. Or you research, okay, you interview students, you interview what you call that, people of different socioeconomic background, people different educational level, then from there you come up, oh, it's not actually attitude. Before the attitude, the Malaysians are generally lack the knowledge. So you come up with a new finding, inductive. You induce a new finding, which is not attitude, it is about the knowledge. Okay, pragmatism, it is both inductive and deductive. So you have induced something, at the same time you also deduce something. So it has a combination of deducing and inducing. Okay, so ontology, what is the nature of reality? Singular reality. So that means you either reject or accept the hypothesis. The reality is only one. You reject or accept hypothesis. In the constructivism, the reality is multiple. It can be anything. Actually, there is no specific reality. It can be any kind of answer to your research question. You cannot say, I want to check the environmental values of the people, so you just check the environmental value. But you want to explore the reason why pollution is so bad. So it could be environmental value, it could be attitude, it could be behavior, it could be knowledge, so many things. So the realities are multiple. Okay, pragmatism, it has both. At times it is a singular, at times it is a multiple. So you might say that attitude is a problem. So using quantitative approach, you identify that attitude is a problem. But then using a multiple reality, you expand what kind of attitude. Is it attitude got to do with what you call that? There are many different type of attitudes. So what kind of attitudes you going further deeper and all that? So it has both multiple and singular reality. So that is pragmatism. And epistemology, what is the relationship between researcher and the research? So as I mentioned in the axiology, you, if you want to have your value imposed in the research, that means your relationship with the research must be close. Okay, like for example, let's say you are doing what you call that observation study. Okay, observation study. So when you're doing an observation study, you have to be one of the participant. Okay, you want to observe you observe a scenario or observe a situation. You cannot distance yourself from the research area. Actually, you should be one of the participant and then observe what is happening, so the closeness is there. But let's say you are administrating a questionnaire, you not necessarily need to be there. You can actually seek somebody's help to collect data, so there's a distance between researcher and the research that you are conducting for positivism. But constructivism, there is a very close association between the researcher and the research. Okay, pragmatism, it is very practical. At some at one point you need to be very close to collect the data, because it is necessary to be the participant, to be one of the sample and to engage in the study, you know but also at some time, to ensure your research really works, you have to distance yourself from the research, you know so that there is both ways here, distancing as also as well as getting closer. That is pragmatism. Okay, rhetoric, what is the language of research? For positivism, it's very structured, APA 7th style. You want to have a table, you want to report your Mankowa result, you want to report your Ankowa result, you want to report your t-test, you have to follow APA 7 style. But then for the interview finding, there is no a specific style. You can write it in any style that you want, as long as it makes sense. That means if you write for your thesis, the panel who read your work, they should be able to understand. Don't write in a way that nobody can understand except yourself. So that's not right. So there is a no formal way of writing for constructivism. It's all informal way of writing, but it has to be presented in a structured way. So anyone who reads, let's say you submit a paper for the journal, the reviewer who reads your finding, they should be able to understand and make sense of your work. Okay, right. Pragmatism, it has both. You are being very structured at one point, and you are being less structured or unstructured in another point. And when you are being structured and unstructured, the combination of structured and unstructured helps to answer your research question. So that is the what you call that highlights of pragmatism. It has the combination of both uh, 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 multiple stance. It has a single and multiple reality. You collect what you call that, you combine quant and qualitative finding together. So that is the good thing about pragmatism. So personally, when I do research, I've been doing a research for a decade, more than a decade. And if you see all my papers published in journals, all my papers employs mixed method, pragmatism paradigm. I don't really use positivism or constructivist paradigm, because I always see there is some kind of restriction with both this paradigm, which do not allow me to find solution for the real world problem that I am investigating. So all my problems are got to do with the environmental issues, as well as educational issues. So all these issues involves human. Okay, semua melibatkan manusia. Okay, all these issues involve humans. How can you explore human using constructivist or positivist paradigm? How can be an attitude measured solely using a questionnaire? you know When I use questionnaire, I'm trying to force the participant to answer according to what I want, you know. But if I using constructivism paradigm, not everybody knows how to answer, especially when you go to the general lay people. If you ask them question, it is very difficult to get what actually I want. My intention is about environmental attitude, but if I go to the lay people, I ask general question, they might not be able to answer. I would not be get answers for my question. They might be answering something, but I would not be able to gather what actually I want. So so I can't be entirely free as well. So cannot be too strict and cannot be too loose. So I need to use both strict and loose in combination to solve my problem. So pragmatism works best to solve real world problem. So pragmatism is the best paradigm for MMR, mixed method research. Okay, that this is what you call that, the phrase that I got from Crashwell and Plano in 2018. So they give priority to applying both quantitative and qualitative research in solving the problem. Okay, so it narrows the research by force between post positivism and constructivism. So that's why, as I has been telling just now, we take the pros of positivism and we take the pros of constructivism, we combine them. So we restrain the negativity of positivism and negativity of constructivism. Okay, so we always, if you read research method books, they always will tell positivism is about investigating the truth. Okay, and then constructivism is always about investigating the reality. So positivism always finds the truth, constructivism about the reality. But in what you call the in actual fact, both truth and reality cannot exist in separation. Both exist together. Truth and reality must exist together. So when the truth and reality can exist together, when positivism and constructivism joins, so they joined in the pragmatism paradigm, or we use mixed method research to answer the to apply the pragmatism paradigm, to find solution, to find answers for the real world problem. Okay, right. So like I have some experience where when I wrote for some journals in if I remember very well, this is my journal on I think it is Taylor and Francis, the publisher. So I wrote something on misconception, students' misconception. So you see here in the literature, even though there are numerous studies done on misconception decision solely using quantitative measures, there are strong suggestions to include qualitative measures in support of quantitative measures. So I'm just looking into students' misconception about climate change. But when my report was using quanti, the reviewer suggested to me, try not to just use quanti, try to use quali as well. Because if you are using quanti, you are actually imposing some kind of limitation in your research. Okay, so um, because overcoming misconception involves identifying mental structure formation of the concept. So in order to overcome the misconception, we need to know the mental structure of the student, how misconception is formed. So if you're just using a quantitative measure, you might not be able to identify their mental structure. So you need to do some kind of interview to identify the mental structure. So when we know the mental structure, it would be appropriate, it will be helpful for us to design some kind of intervention to reduce the misconception. So if you're just using a quantitative survey, you might be able to report, or what are the levels of misconception, so what are the levels of knowledge, but what is the reason how the misconception is formed in their mental mind would not be there. So it is very important to um, go explore qualitatively to identify the mental structure of the people, and why it is important. The mental structure is important in order to us to design some kind of treatment to address the misconception. So what is MMR? So mixed method research. So just now I talk about pragmatism. I hope you all you would able to get what I'm trying to say, but please go and read up if you are interested. But I would like to go further. So if you want to what you call that, introduce pragmatism in your research, the best way to introduce pragmatism is using MMR, mixed method research. So what is mixed method research? So if you look, post positivism and positivism exists beginning from 1960s, you know. And then in 19 80s, 70s and 80s onwards, qualitative research came about, you know. So only after 2000 people start to talk about pragmatism, and then people start to talk about mixed method research. So mixed method research is also known as the third methodological movement. It is also known as third research paradigm. It is also known as a new star in social science sky. It's not only social science, it's also in science, multiple ways of seeing and hearing. So this is what you call that in s- we are still in the early stage of mixed method research, as not established like how quantitative and qualitative research has established itself. Okay, so this is how people name the mixed method research in the 2003 2004 and onwards. But nowadays more research has been adapting mixed method research. So like for example, so if you're doing a survey, you're using a quantitative approach, you might find the effects of IV and DV, and you also might be finding the moderating and mediating effects of the variables, and you might be establishing a relationship between the variable and establish a model of using PLSM, and then confirming the attributes of the variables. So this is a survey thing. Okay, in a survey, if you're using a qual approach, you might want to find how IV affects the DV. So how the independent variable affects the dependent variable. It is not whether it affects or not, but how. Okay, so it's a lot of difference, effects of IV on DV, and looking into how it affects. Okay, and you might want to see how the moderating or mediating effects takes place, how the relationship takes place. So qual is more of explorative in nature, but in a mixed method you use both confirmatory and exploratory simultaneously, you combine them. So when you use quant, you might know the effect of IV and DV. If you use qual, you might know how IV affects DV, but you would not know whether the what you call that, the eta value, eta square in SPSS, we call it as a eta square, uh, uh, the percentage of effect, you know, whether it's 70%, 30%. Only in quant you can find out eta square value, then you can say that the effect is 70%, 0.7. If the eta square value is 0.5, then you can say a 50% effect of IV on DV, you know. But in a qual you might not get the eta square, but you can see that, oh, there is some kind of possible relationship. But in the mixed method research, when you combine quant and qual, you might get the eta square simultaneously. You will get how the effect took place. Okay, so that's why it is called pragmatism, what works. Okay, pragmatism is about what works. If in an experimental study, let's say you're using a quant at all, you're comparing the effect of a treatment on the experimental and control group, you will get let's say a mean differences of experimental and control group. Then you might say that based on the differences, your treatment has significantly improved the attitude, participants attitude. But how the treatment contribute to the improvement of the attitude, you might not able to decide. For that, you need a quant. Okay, only based on qual finding you will be able to identify how the attitude, how the treatment that you introduced improved the attitude. But if you're using mixed method, you can get whether there is an effect of the treatment on the attitude, and also you can see how it affected the attitude formation. So it always mixed method always shows what works, how it works, what works. That's a very important uh, what you call that, the important term in a mixed method research design. Pragmatism is about what works. So it's not merely talking about whether there is an effect or not, but it's also about how the treatment affect the attitude formation. So when you combine the method, you will get both the finding. So let's say you want to do a program evaluation research method course. So if you're using quant, the course materials, people will say, okay, I find the course material is good, the lecture is intangible, the course content is appropriate and relevant. But if you go deeper, you from this you might only get a very superficial kind of finding you know but if you do some kind of observation, you can go deeper. In what way the material has benefited the students, in what way the lecture, the students have benefited from the lecture. So you go deeper. So in the mixed method combination of both quant and qual, it results in what works. Okay, right. So that's why I said pragmatism is the best way to do research, especially when the research involves human, and also it is the what do you call that, it is the most appropriate way to do research that deals with the real world problem. So nowadays all our real world problem are complex. You can't simply do a disciplinary specific research. You can't find solution for that. It is impossible for you to find solution. The best way to find solution is to do combination of quant and qual. At the same time you can what you call that introduce pragmatism paradigm to your research. Actually I have many slides, but I don't think I have a time to cover all that. So this one this cartoon I took it from Ted Lee and Tasha Corey. They said that qualitative method, it's this person, he is a qualitative researcher. He said constructivism, inductive logic, exploratory research, grounded theory, qualitative method is the best. And this person is a quantitative researcher. He said quantitative methods are the best. But in the middle, the mixed method who employs pragmatism method, she says that the research question derives everything. It's not that I like to do quanti, I do quanti, or I like to do quali, I do quali. The what decide your work is your research question. So what decide your research question is your research problem. Okay, so from the research problem you can actually employ the the five what you call that elements of worldview that I have introduced just now. I introduced five elements of the worldview. You can try to understand the worldview, and then once you have your research problem, you see which worldview it falls. Your problems falls into which worldview. You can actually mix, and you try to match, and from there you can decide on the method that you want to choose in answering your research question. Okay, right. Actually I have a lot of slide, but I'm not sure whether I have the time to cover everything. It's already 4:10. Yeah, Dr. Haizat, I think I'll stop here. One
Yeah.
4:15, right?
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for the interesting sharing.
Mhm.
Uh, we open for Q&A. Is it any question from participants? Sangat menarik pembintangan Prof tadi. Mungkin
Tak
kami
cukup
mungkin
masa Dr.
ya
Haizat.
ya ya
Kalau mungkin nanti kalau ada masa lebih, Dr. Haizat boleh jemput saya, and I
ya
can share the what you call that, lebih mendalam lagi lah.
ya
Ini
ya
superficial saja. Uh,
ya ya Prof.
uh,
Dan saya sangat teruja lah sangat dengan pembentangan tadi. Mungkin dari sini mungkin ada sekiranya ada soalan daripada peserta, mungkin kita dalam sedikit masa yang ada ni mungkin ada pertanyaan daripada peserta. Kita buka untuk soal jawab. Okay. Mungkin ada.
I just want to share one scenario lah. Like student
Ya.
datang kan buat
Ya.
research kan saya.
Hmm.
Dia datang kat saya. First question dia tanya, doktor, Prof nak buat kuanti ke? Prof ni nak buat kuali. So
Ya.
the approach pun is wrong.
Hmm.
It's sudah salah. You know, it's
Betul.
not that way. It's actually you need to count from the research problem. You kena the student need to know how to apply the five elements. You know, the worldview elements, and then from there they all should decide. Okay, I fall my problem now falls under which paradigm, and then
Hmm.
from there I move on. That's how it should be. But always my experience pun also sama. When student come, they come with a totally a different mindset.
Ya, betul. Saya pun
Right.
sama masa saya buat PhD dulu pun memilih antara kuanti dengan kuali.
Correct.
Ya. Mungkin saya rasa mungkin tak ada soalan. Mungkin saya rasa banyak lagi kita perlu belajar. Mungkin menarik yang kita perlu kutip daripada Prof mungkin.
Yeah, sure,
Ya,
sure, no problem.
ya mungkin masa-masa akan datang kita akan jemput Prof lagi.
Boleh.
Ya,
So just closing lah. So this
ya.
is what I showed just now is just a glance. So
Mm-mm.
how to do it? There is a different way of doing it. The sampling strategy, how to write a research question, whether it should based on content based or it should be based on a question based. So they ada banyak benda lagi. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So first we need to know the paradigm. From the paradigm, we go deeper. How to write research question, how to write purpose statement, how to write objective. So lebih mendalam lagi.
Mungkin Prof ada workshop ataupun course yang Prof ada buat ke Anjur di sana ke mungkin?
Ya, nanti saya share dengan Dr. Rohaizat lah bila saya ni. Actually saya sangat sibuk, ramai ada permintaan tapi tak sempat buat.
Okey. Mungkin kalau ada permintaan di sini mungkin kita boleh jemput Prof ke sini juga untuk sesi workshop mungkin di sini kalau ada keperluan nanti.
Boleh.
Ya. Saya mungkin sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih kepada Prof di atas perkongsian yang menarik ni. Mungkin kita kesutukan masa untuk pergi lebih dalam lagi. Mungkin sekiranya ada peluang dan pada mungkin akan datang kita jemput lagi Prof. InsyaAllah. Okay. Thank you Prof.
Okay, terima kasih Encik Rohaizat, and thank you for all the participants for your time. Hopefully you have benefited from my talk. Thank you so much. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.